المقالات السنية, the Sunni articles, في كشف ضلالات أحمد بن تيمية, in exposing the deviances of Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah by our Sheikh Abdullah. This is a nice thick textbook. And the Sheikh, he spared no expense here in this book. Now here we are. The author says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Muqaddimatul Mu'allif. The author's introduction. قال المحدث الفقيه الشيخ عبد الله الهرري رحمه الله. Said the muhaddith, the hadith scholar. Al-faqih, the jurist. Al-sheikh, the sheikh. Abdullah al-Harari. Abdullah, the one from the town of Harar. Rahimahullah. May Allah have mercy upon him. Alhamdulillahi wa sallallahu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Praise be to Allah, and may Allah raise the rank of Prophet Muhammad, the messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam, and protect his nation from that which he feared for them. Wa ba'du, thereafter, i'lam anna sababa ta'alifi هذه الرسالة. Know that the reason for authoring this treatise أن كثيرا من الناس ظنوا is that many people thought أن القول بأن نوع العالم أزلي ليس مخلوقا لله, because many people thought that saying that the world in its kind, the type of the world in type, the world in kind is eternal and not created by Allah. وَإِثْبَاتَ الْحَدِّ لِلَّهِ وَالْجِسْمِيَّةِ, and that confirming a limit for Allah and corporeality, yani body. وَتَحْرِيمَ التَّوَسُّلِ بِالْأَنْبِيَاءِ وَالْأَوْلِيَاءِ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهِمْ, and that the prohibition of tawassul by the prophets and the saints after their deaths. وَالتَّبَرُّكِ بِزِيَارَةِ قُبُورِهِمْ, and seeking blessings by visiting their graves. The prohibition of seeking blessings by visiting their graves. هُوَ عَقِيدَةُ السَّلَفِ, that this is the creed of the Salaf. Many people thought that these cases of the world in kind being eternal and not created by Allah, and that God having a limit and a body, and that the prohibition of tawassul by prophets and saints after their death, and the prohibition of seeking blessings by visiting their graves, that this is the creed of the Salaf. وَمَا كَانُوا عَلَيْهِ عَمَلًا, and that this was their practice. فَلَمَّا كَانَ الْأَمْرُ كَذَلِكَ, so since that was the case, this was their assumption, دعت الضرورة إلى بيان أن الأمر على خلاف هذا, necessity called for clarifying that the matter is على خلاف هذا. Necessity called for clarifying that the matter is contrary to that. That's not the case. على خلاف هذا أي أن السلف كانوا على تنزيه الله تعالى عن الحد, meaning that truly the Salaf, their creed was exalting Allah Ta'ala from a limit. بمعنى أن الله تعالى ليس له حد أصلا, with the meaning that Allah Ta'ala does not have a limit in the first place. أي ليس له حد في علم الله ولا فيما وصل إليه علم الخلق, meaning that Allah does not have a limit that He knows, nor is there a limit that the creations know. There is no limit for Allah in any way. There's no limit for Allah fundamentally. وأن التوسل بالأنبياء والأولياء بعد موتهم, and that tawassul by prophets and saints after their deaths, وَالتَّبَرُّكَ بِزِيَارَةِ قُبُورِهِمْ رَجَاءَ إِجَابَةِ الدُّعَاءِ عِنْدَ قُبُورِهِمْ, and that seeking blessings by visiting their graves, hoping that the supplication would be answered at their graves. هُوَ الْأَمْرُ الَّذِي كَانَ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَفُ. This is the matter that the Salaf was upon. This was their belief and their practice. وبيان أن الإمام أحمد كان على خلاف ما أحدثه ابن تيمية وأتباعه. And necessity called for clarifying that Imam Ahmad was against what Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah and his followers innovated. فرأينا من الواجب كشف هذا التلبيس. So we have seen, Sheikh means himself, we knew, we deemed, it was obligatory to expose this trickery, this deception. ببيان أن الإجماع كان على جواز التوسل بالأنبياء والأولياء بعد وفاتهم. By clarifying that the consensus is that tawassul by prophets and saints after their deaths is permissible. وأن قصد قبورهم للتبرك ليس شركا. And the consensus is that seeking their graves for seeking blessings is not paganism. وأن مس القبر إن كان للتبرك جائز ليس في ذلك شيء من الشرك. And that touching the grave, if that were for seeking blessing, is permissible. And there is not a bit of paganism involved in that. But ليس حراما. In fact, it's not even forbidden. وهذه الرسالة وافية ببيان المستند الشرعي. This treatise is sufficient for clarifying the religious evidence. وسيرى مطالع هذه الرسالة ذلك تفصيلا إن شاء الله. And whoever reads this treatise shall see that in detail, if God willed. التعريف بابن تيمية وتلميذه ابن قيم الجوزية. Identifying Ibn Taymiyyah and his student Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah. والتعريف بالإمام تقي الدين السبكي. And identifying Imam Taqiyuddin as-Subki. وذكر نبذة مختصرة عن حياة محمد بن عبد الوهاب. And a small mentioning, a brief mentioning of the life of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. So it's the first chapter here. And the Shaykh starts out with Ibn Taymiyyah. ليعلم أن أحمد بن تيمية هذا. Let it be known that this Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah, الذي هو حفيد الفقيه المجد بن تيمية الحنبلي المشهور, the one who is the grandson of the jurist Al-Majd ibn Taymiyyah. This is his grandfather, Al-Majd ibn Taymiyyah. So the one we're warning from is Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah. He is a grandchild of Al-Majd ibn Taymiyyah, the famous Hanbali jurist. ولد بحران ببيت علم من الحنابلة. Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah, he was born in Harran, that's Turkey, in a house of knowledge, a house of Hanbalis. وقد أتى به والده الشيخ عبد الحليم مع ذويه من هناك إلى الشام. His father, Sheikh Abdul Halim, brought him with his relatives or with his family from there, from Harran to the Levant, خوفا من المغول, fleeing from the Mongols. وكان أبوه رجلا هادئا. His father was an even-tempered man, يعني a calm man. أكرمه علماء الشام ورجال الحكومة. The scholars of the Levant respected him, and also the men of the government. حتى ولوه عدة وظائف علمية مساعدة له. To the extent that they gave him a number of academic jobs to help him. Talk about the father, Abdul Halim. وبعد أن مات والده, and then after his father died, Abdul Halim, ولوا ابن تيمية هذا وظائف والده. They gave this Ibn Taymiyyah the jobs of his father, the responsibilities of his father, وظائف. So وظائف is the plural of wazifa. Wazifa is a function, a job that you do. بل حضروا درسه تشجيعا له على المضي في وظائف والده. In fact, they attended his lessons to encourage him to continue his father's work. وأثنوا عليه خيرا, and they praised him. They praised Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah. كما هو شأنهم مع كل ناشئ حقيق بالرعاية. Like is their case for everyone who needs some support. وعطفهم هذا كان ناشئا من مهاجرة ذويه من وجه المغول. And this care of theirs that they gave him was because of their migrating to escape the Mongols.
يصحبهم أحد بني العباس, and one of the Abbasids accompanied their family. وهو الذي تولى الخلافة بمصر فيما بعد, and he's the one who took the caliphate in Egypt later.
ومن وفاة والده بدون مال ولا تراث. And it was because of his father passing away without any money and without leaving any inheritance. بحيث لو عين الآخرون في وظائفه للقي عياله البؤس والشقاء. Such that had someone else been given his father's positions, then his family would have faced great difficulty. وكان من جملة المثنين عليه تاج الفزاري المعروف بالفركاح. Amongst those who praised Ibn Taymiyyah was Al-Firkah, وابنه البرهان, and his son Burhanuddin, والجلال القزويني, and Al-Jalal al-Qazwini, ومحمد بن الحريري الأنصاري والعلاء القونوي وغيرهم, and Muhammad ibn al-Hariri al-Ansari and al-Ala al-Qunawi and others. لكن ثناء هؤلاء غر ابن تيمية. However, their praise deceived Ibn Taymiyyah. ولم ينتبه إلى الباعث على ثنائهم, and he did not pay attention to the true motivation of their praise. Yani, he thinks they're praising him for himself, not that they're trying to help him out. فبدأ يذيع بدعا بين حين وآخر. So then he started spreading innovations from time to time. وأهل العلم يتسامحون معه في الأوائل. And the people of knowledge were pardoning him at first. باعتبار أن تلك الكلمات ربما تكون فلتات لا ينطوي هو عليها. They reckon that these words were perhaps some slips and that he wasn't really believing like that. لكن خاب ظنهم, but he disappointed them. وعلموا أنه فاتن بالمعنى الصحيح, and they knew that he was troubled truly. فتخلوا عنه واحدا إثر واحد على توالي فتنه. And so they abandoned him one by one as his tribulations went on. ثم إن ابن تيمية وإن كان ذاع صيته وكثرت مؤلفاته وأتباعه. Furthermore, indeed, Ibn Taymiyyah, although he has a big reputation and he has many authorings and followers, هو كما قال فيه المحدث الحافظ الفقيه ولي الدين العراقي ابن شيخ الحفاظ زين الدين العراقي. He is as the hadith scholar, the hadith headmaster, and the jurist, Waliuddin al-Iraqi, son of the sheikh of the hadith headmasters, Zainuddin al-Iraqi, son of Zainuddin al-Iraqi, Waliuddin al-Iraqi. He said about Ibn Taymiyyah, في كتابه الأجوبة المرضية على الأسئلة المكية, in his book called الأجوبة المرضية, the acceptable answers, or the accepted answers, the accepted responses. What did he say about Ibn Taymiyyah? علمه أكبر من عقله. His knowledge surpasses his intelligence. He has more knowledge than his mind can process. By the way, this book, do you know something in this book? There's a reference in this book that you need. In that book, he cites Ibn Hajar as referring to the hadith of Ashura for proving the Mawlid. وقال أيضا, and he also said, إنه خرق الإجماع في مسائل كثيرة. Indeed, he breached the consensus in many cases. قيل تبلغ 60 مسألة. It was said that they reach 60 cases. بعضها في الأصول وبعضها في الفروع. Some of those were in the fundamental convictions, and some of those were in the offshoot sciences. And Sheikh Jamil, he said to us, he used to come and give us a lesson one year in the university. Once a week, he used to come to give us a lesson in my class. And he told us that our brothers tracked what Ibn Taymiyyah said, and they said he has more than 100 breaches of consensus. خالف فيها بعد انعقاد الإجماع عليها. He dissented in those cases after the consensus was concluded about them. انتهى. وتبعه على ذلك خلق من العوام وغيرهم. And many commoners followed Ibn Taymiyyah in that, and other than commoners. So other than commoners, scholars. So there are people of knowledge who have been influenced by Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Kathir, Al-Dhahabi, and others. And although Al-Dhahabi, he said what he said about Ibn Taymiyyah, and Ibn Rajab, and Ibn al-Qayyim. I don't know if Ibn al-Qayyim is even counted as a scholar really. I don't know if he's really a scholar, but it would be thought that he is. فأسرع علماء عصره في الرد عليه وتبديعه. And so the scholars of his time rushed to refute him and to deem him a heretic. منهم الإمام الحافظ تقي الدين علي ابن عبد الكافي السبكي. Amongst them is the Imam. He's mujtahid mutlaq according to a saying. According to a saying, this one, as-Subki, he has his own madhab really, but his ijtihad mirrors the ijtihad of ash-Shafi'i. And so his madhab is annexed into the Shafi'i school. According to that, he's a mujtahid muntasib. So the Shafi'is regard his ijtihad. Hafiz, he's a hadith headmaster. Taqiyuddin, his name is Ali, son of Abdul Kafi as-Subki. So we're going to just call him as-Subki, Imam as-Subki, or Taqiyuddin as-Subki. He has some sons also. So you might hear Ibn Subki, Ibn Subki, so don't mix that with this one. This is the father, as-Subki. قال في الدرة المضية. He said in الدرة المضية, ما نصه, quote, أما بعد, thereafter, فإنه لما أحدث ابن تيمية ما أحدث في أصول العقائد. Indeed, when it was that Ibn Taymiyyah innovated what he innovated in the fundamentals of the convictions, ونقض من دعائم الإسلام الأركان والمعاقد, and he knocked down the pillars that hold up the ceiling, meaning he breached fundamentals in Islam. بعد أن كان مستترا بتبعية الكتاب والسنة, after he was veiling himself with following the book and the sunnah. مظهرا أنه داع إلى الحق, displaying that he is a caller to the truth. هاد إلى الجنة, and a guide to the garden. فخرج عن الاتباع إلى الابتداع, he departed the status of following and entered into the status of innovating. وشذ عن جماعة المسلمين بمخالفة الإجماع, and he deviated from the Muslim body by opposing the consensus. وقال بما يقتضي الجسمية, he said what dictates corporeality, bodifying God. والتركيب في الذات المقدس, and he said what dictates composition in the holy self of God. وأن الافتقار إلى الجزء ليس بمحال, and he said that for God to be in need of pieces or parts to compose his self is not impossible. وقال بحلول الحوادث بذات الله تعالى, and he said that events occur within the self of Allah Ta'ala. وأن القرآن محدث, and he said that the Quran is created. تكلم الله به بعد أن لم يكن. He's saying, he said that the speech of Allah is created and that Allah spoke after he was not speaking. وأنه يتكلم ويسكت, and that Allah speaks and goes silent. He means, and then he speaks and then goes silent, and then he speaks and then he goes silent whenever he wants. ويحدث في ذاته الإرادات بحسب المخلوقات, and possibly ويحدث الإرادات, that would be valid. So if it's يحدث, and that he creates in himself wills in accordance with each creation, or if it's يحدث الإرادات, and that wills occur in his self in accordance with the creations. Yani, for each creation, there's a will. Not that Allah has one will, one eternal will. This statement here is a denial of destiny, by the way. Such a creed is a denial of destiny. Because to believe in destiny in this case would mean that one believes that Allah has one eternal will that doesn't change. And that the created things come into existence in time, in their own times, in accordance with an eternal will that exists without time. That's destiny. This is a negation of that. وَتَعَدَّى فِي ذَلِكَ إِلَى اسْتِلْزَامِ قِدَمِ الْعَالَمِ. And then he went beyond that to confirm eternality of the world. وَالْتِزَامُهُ بِالْقَوْلِ وَالْتِزَامِهِ بِالْقَوْلِ بِأَنَّهُ لَا أَوَّلَ لِلْمَخْلُوقَاتِ. And he transgressed beyond that to stick to saying that there's no beginning for creations. فَقَالَ بِحَوَادِثَ لَا أَوَّلَ لَهَا. He therefore said that there are beginningless creations. That's self-contradictory. حَوَادِثَ لَا أَوَّلَ لَهَا. Events that didn't start is the meaning of that. What he means is, each event, it was an event, so it had a beginning in itself, but before it there was another one. And then before that one there was another one, forever reversing into the past with no beginning. فأثبت الصفة القديمة حادثة والمخلوق الحادث قديما. By this, Ibn Taymiyyah confirms that the eternal attribute is created and that the created event is eternal. وَلَمْ يَجْمَعْ أَحَدٌ هَذَيْنِ الْقَوْلَيْنِ فِي مِلَّةٍ مِنَ الْمِلَلِ. And no one in any religion ever has said both of those at once. وَلَا نِحْلَةٍ مِنَ النِّحَلِ. فَلَمْ يَدْخُلْ فِي فِرْقَةٍ مِنَ الْفِرَقِ الثَّلَاثِ وَالسَّبْعِينَ. And by that, he therefore was not included in any of the 73 sects. التي افترقت عليها الأمة. Those 73 sects into which the nation disunited. The nation disunited into 73 sects, one of them being the majority, which is Ahlul Sunnah. By what he has said, he is not included in any of those. وَلَا وَقَفَتْ بِهِ مَعَ أُمَّةٍ مِنَ الْأُمَمِ هِمَّةٍ. وَكُلُّ ذَلِكَ وَإِنْ كَانَ كُفْرًا شَنِيعًا. And all of that, though it is heinous blasphemy, that's Taqiyuddin as-Subki. Though it is heinous blasphemy, مِمَّا تَقِلُّ جُمْلَتُهُ بِالنِّسْبَةِ لِمَا أَحْدَثَ فِي الْفُرُوعِ. It is little in comparison to what he innovated in the offshoot sciences. Intaha, end quote.